Hi, everyone. This is Tammy with VA to VA Mastermind Live, and we're so glad to have you with us today. I have Nanette Telemek as well, and we're going to be talking about transitioning team members today. A very important topic. We haven't talked about this before, so I'm very excited to discuss it with you guys. And if you're watching live, please put questions in the chats because we do answer live questions, and we like to have some conversations with you as well. Lisa Colby couldn't be here today. Unfortunately, she's under the weather, and we wish her well and to be feeling better and back with us next month, we hope. So again, I'm Tammy Durden. I own Tammy's Office Solutions. We provide digital services, virtual digital services for companies from micro, small to mid-size, and providing digital marketing services, virtual assistant services, as well as writing and bookkeeping services. And then I'm also the owner of Fearless Boss Babes Coaching Services. So anytime you need some help with any of those, we'd love to have you joining us and contacting us. I want to introduce my cohort today, Nanette Telemek, and let her introduce herself and what she does.
Thank you, Tammy. My name is Nanette Telemek with In Essence Virtual Assistants out of Newbury, New Hampshire. And I also offer business support in digital marketing, sales, and administrative tasks. So I cover a wide area, and my customers basically are small companies or professionals, consultants and coaches and people of that nature. So welcome.
My pointer did not want to go to unmute today. Sorry. We were joking earlier, guys. I have a glow behind me today because I transitioned my office, talking about transitions, to upstairs. Because as you know, I have MS and sometimes it's difficult for me to manage the stairs. So we transitioned the office to upstairs, but I haven't had time to get the curtains yet to cover the windows. So we have a glow today. So we're angelic. So anyway, but we were joking about that earlier. And we just want to get into our subject today then. And if you have any questions or want to add to the chat, please do. I know we get a lot of viewers on our playback, more than we actually do live. So we always love for you to also put comments in the section below the video. And we'll get back in touch with you to answer any questions we can. So to start off, though, we're talking about transitioning team members. And one of the things that I was thinking about in talking today was, like, why do we have to transition team members? What happens that we have that turnover or that issue that we have to think, okay, well, what are we going to do here? So some of the things, that I thought of and that I've come in contact myself personally with the team are things such as maternity leave. People are sick. You have that they leave the team, of course, or that you have to, unfortunately, and this is rare, I think, is to fire a team member. And I faced all of those things in my business over the last 10 years, and they're not easy. But if you plan and you have processes in place, and it's funny because that word keeps coming up over and over lately, the processes. And, it's even a great niche market to be in because so many solopreneurs are doing it all and then start growing and don't even have a process in place or have them written down. And so there's a lot of VAs that are actually starting to get into that little niche area of being able to do the processes for them and document them and help them with that, and softwares that'll help them. But anyway, so it is going to be very, very important that you have some processes in place during this time. It'll make it so much easier for you. Recently, we had somebody on maternity leave. It was my daughter. She had joined our team last year and had her on maternity leave. And we joked because she said it was so much work preparing for somebody else to take that spot for her that she said, I'll just work. And I said, no, you need time off. You need time to be with your newborn. And so we had a lot to do, though, because there were some things that weren't in place. We thought we had a lot in place in regard to processes and how to do things and all of that. But we realized that when it came to client by client, we really should have a process for each client even. So that should somebody be out one day or even for, weeks at an end, then you have those processes and somebody can step in and help take that place. So it did actually go very smoothly because we did put all of that in place ahead of time. We worked on it for probably 4 weeks, ahead of time, not every minute of the day, but just a little at a time. And so it did go very smoothly. And then when she was ready to jump back in, it went just as smooth. So that was really nice. Now, I've had, and that's a little bumpy, generally speaking. I don't know if you've had that, Nanette, but it can be a little bumpy because as the manager of the team, hopefully you know most of the tasks that are being done for your clients. However, if you've hired somebody to do a task that you don't know, and they're out and something's due, that could be a real problem. So you have to be really careful, again, to make sure that people are writing down processes or, documenting them in some way for you as well, so that if you do need to jump in, you can, or that you have a good client that if something needed to be put off a day or two, it could be until that person was well again. So, these are things to really consider when you're talking about a team, or that you have a backup person for that team member. And that's very important because I know for me, there are some softwares I don't know, and I really don't want necessarily to know. I know the overall how to do it, and if I had to, I could probably jump in. But I don't really want to get into the ins and outs of it. So I have team members that can do that. And it's just because I'm in a different place in my business now where I'm mostly trying to manage and not have to do the hands-on client work because I'm trying to bring in clients. So, you have to, it's a little bit tricky there when you have somebody ill, and you need to make sure that you do have somebody at least on call to be able to be that person in their place just in case. And then when somebody leaves a team, hopefully in your contracts, subcontracts, and everything, you have, processes in place basically of how much notice they need to give you and that kind of thing. Because if you're paying, say you have package rates and you're paying a month in advance, basically at the beginning of the month when the client pays, if for some reason that team member leaves in the middle of the month, then what? And who's going to pay the other team member that takes over for the rest of the month? Because you've already paid your team member for the month. So I know some don't do it that way. Some will just pay it week by week or a half a month and then a half a month. Now for new team members, when they come on, I don't pay full months. I pay the first half, and then when it gets to the middle of the month, I pay the second half, just simply because I need to be sure they're going to be there the whole month, and you don't know a person and how they work until you really start working with them. So that's just my practice anyway. But so you have to make sure that you have those terms in your subcontracts. Your subcontractor contracts. I'll get it out in a minute. And, you want to make sure they're very clear. And the same is true for those that you have to let go. You want to make sure you're very clear on the terms in the contract. If you have to let somebody go, what that looks like and how much notice, because you don't even realize some of the things that can come up that may have to be dealt with that day in that issue, and they might be gone that day. You know what I mean? So, and we do bookkeeping, so I definitely have to be very careful of those who are handling that. And I really need to, if there has been something recently, not that they did anything necessarily wrong with finances or anything like that. It's just that they had some things going on in their life and they were not meeting the deadlines I needed. And so I had to get somebody else to take over the account. And that was very frustrating. But had that been a situation in that case, because we were getting caught up on his year, we were billing hourly. So that was okay. It worked. But had I paid in advance, that could have been a real issue because I might not have gotten that money back, to be able to pay the other team member who took over for her. So, there's all kinds of situations that come up, and it's really sometimes just case by case. But the more experience you have running a team, then the more you'll be prepared for what comes up, and even still, there'll be situations that you'll be like, oh my goodness, I never saw this coming. And you just learn to handle it, and you get more experience and more seasoned. And that way, as you continue moving forward, you have that behind you to be able to help run your team in the future. So what I would say, one of the things that we were going to talk, the first point was, what do you do when a team member leaves? And so for me, it really is about the processes and what terms has the team member given you if they're leaving. If it's something, like I said, where you can plan ahead, maternity leave, that's great. Or if you have to fire them, it really depends on the situation. And so I would definitely make sure your contracts are in check and that you have the terms that you need and that the processes are in place so that when they do leave, you're ready to go, and it doesn't, it's okay. It runs smoothly still. So those are some of the overall points, I think for today that we want to discuss, and maybe get into a few of the details of how that would look. So Nanette, I'm going to turn it over to you now and let you take the next one.
I had to unmute. So I guess you touched on a lot of things that I was going to mention as well. And one of them is dealing with letting a team member go, the how, the when, and the why. And just to give you reiterate what you had said about the overview, dealing with underperforming subcontractors can be a real nightmare, and it disrupts the workflow. It creates delays for other scheduled other subcontractors that may be doing part of the project work. And so it has a ripple effect, and it can send your work costs skyrocketing, and you really don't want that. So not to mention that, missing the client or project's contractual agreement. And so it's a snowball you never want to get to. And unless this bump in the road is taken care of fairly quickly, it can cause some real havoc in just your business and your relationship with your clients. So like you said, Tammy, having processes in place is really important to protect yourself. And keep in mind that no subcontractor, purposely try to underperform, and just they bear a lot up front depending on how you pay them. They put a lot of effort into it, so it's not their intention to shirk their responsibilities, but sometimes things happen, or it could be something as simple as they overestimated their capabilities. But if you are vetting and interviewing well, you won't that won't happen, but it can, and so be aware. There are many reasons why you may have to let a subcontractor go, like Tammy mentioned. And so it's really imperative that you watch out for warning signs, because there's always warning signs that you could pick up and nip them in the bud before it becomes a real threat to your project at large. And some of those examples that I had was it just wasn't a good fit, and sometimes that happens. The team member that you have working with your client, they just not meshing, or it's that they don't fit with your business model. So those things could be the problem. You thought it was going to be a good fit, and it turned out it wasn't. And let's see. That's one of the reasons, and my notes are all confused, I think. Some of the things that could also be a problem is let me see. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little confused here because I got my papers all messed up.
Well, it's fine. I just thought, what you said about the vetting process is so important because, when we're trying to vet team members, and you can get a feel for them, but you don't know until they're in there. But having that vetting process is huge. It makes a big difference.
It does make a big difference, and it really, and I think it is experience that eventually you start interviewing better. In the beginning, it's more touchy feely. You're happy or whatever that somebody's going to work with you, and then you start paying attention to details, like what people say, how do they say it, what's their attitude, and those things can will help you not have that fits. So it could be poor communications, unprofessional attitude, a lack of skill qualifications. Like I said, they overestimated what they can do, or they lie about their background, poor time management, and a constant delay of deliverables when you expect to have it, and they're constantly a couple of days late or whatever. If that's systemic, that's not going to be good. So these are all like red flags that people should be aware of. And secondly, you should have a contract, subcontractors agreement. And another issue could be that they're not meeting that contractual agreement, and so fails to execute a project correctly, fails to meet an agreement, the agreement on the contract, the specific things, and delivers sloppy or incomplete work. Hopefully, you won't get to that part again. It's about vetting, and if you don't vet, this is some of the issues that you can find and reasons why you'd have to let them go. And an aspect of a company's finances change. That can happen. Sometimes it's not them, it's you. Maybe, um, some of your businesses have fallen out and you don't need them. And so or you change the priorities of your business structure. Or you can't afford to pay a subcontract anymore. And that's a shame. I would hate any of us to get to that point, but it can happen. And there will be times your subcontractor comes to you with a problem. It could be a personal problem, or a pregnancy or something, and or their own clients, because a lot of them have their own clients sometimes, and that could be interfering with their ability to meet your needs. And that has to do with communication. But if they're coming to you and to talk to you, you guys can work it out, and that's a good thing. To be able to sit. What you want is to be able to sit down and talk to your team member before it becomes an issue, and work out a plan going forward on how to meet your deadlines or meet their needs when something comes up, like a death in the family or something like that. So communication is really key, and having that communication is important. Now, when you're the when to let a team member go is important too. So if you notice any red flags during your time with a subcontractor, don't ignore them. Okay, don't think, oh, it'll get better. She's just having a bad day. Really, the point you need to remember is that it's a hassle to find another subcontractor. It's so much work, and it's time consuming, and that means money lost. So you want to work with your subcontractor as soon as possible, and work on the relationship, and don't prolong the inevitable if you can't seem to get something to work. Again, like Tammy said, making sure you have a subcontractor's agreement that outlines the terms and what your expectations are with them. Make sure that's there, because that's something that you could use as backup. I mean, they signed it, and so they know what it is, and so you can hold them to that. Now, one thing I will say is that there are times when people do fall behind for whatever reason. They get overwhelmed or something happened personally. And that's not a breach of contract if it says you will meet these deadlines at such and such a time. I know that, say it becomes a law issue, say small claim court or something. It's not a breach of a contract if somebody does a minor now and then misses a deadline. That's not a breach of a contract. But if it's systemic, then that would be considered. So just to know that. And what you don't want to do is just jump on somebody if they don't do it right away. If you have clear communications with your subcontractor and you understand that they may be going through some issues, and you have a working plan with them on how to get back to where you need them to be, then that's a good thing, and that's what you want to try to do. Again, you want to save money and time of trying to find somebody else. and you don't want to nitpick on every time somebody's maybe a little late if they have a valid reason. If you're communicating well with them, then you know that I think that's helpful. You just don't want to be taken advantage of. Because the consequences of improperly terminating a subcontractor could be severe. I mean, you can wind up in small claims court, and you don't really want to be there. So, but if you have your processes in order, you have your subcontract agreement, and you're following steps, and I would say even have a step-by-step process of how to deal with issues that's documented, then you should be safe. No matter who ends the working relationship between you and your subcontractor, it's important that you both kind of leave in good terms if you can. Contact the other well in advance and explain that you have decided to end the agreement. Your contract should state how much notice you need to give, and if you want to end the contract early, you know, that should all be stipulated in the subcontract. That's for your protection. Now, how to get in touch depends on your relationship with your contractor. Uh, I researched like what is the best way. I think a phone call and having a nice conversation about it is the best. Some people said, you know, well, depending if you mostly email people, email, but I think that's impersonal. I think it requires a phone call because you're severing a relationship and you want to do it in good terms. And I don't think an email is the best way to do it. That's sort of like breaking up with an email. You know, who likes that? What I would suggest is define before you get to the point where you're terminating someone, you wanna take some steps or have some steps in place on how to do it correctly. And what I would say is define and track a set amount of corrective actions you would take for a performance issue, and then you walk them through that. I would say that. If somebody's being late, then have a set amount of times that they're breaching their contract. Say 5 times they breach your contract, you know, not once, not twice, but maybe 5 times, and the steps you did to try to correct it. And if they weren't corrected, then you have this documented timeline that says, you know, they did this, that, I tried this, we worked together with that, there wasn't a result. A result didn't happen, it didn't change. And so I'm letting this person go. And then this way that if this person wants to be disagreeable and maybe want to bring in a small claims court or for whatever reasons, you have your documents, you have the timeline and everything, which is really important for any judge to see. You have all that. There's nothing that they can say. You did everything properly. So you want to make sure that you document things like that. And then I hope none of us ever have to go through that. But if you have your processes in place, then that eliminates you know, a loss of time and money on your part. Now, the other thing is communicate often and ask questions. You know what's going on. I see that you were late a couple of times. Is something going on? How can we address this? What do you need from me? Am I not communicating well with you? Because maybe you're not. You know, try to make sure you're finding out what the issues are. If it's you and it's a different way of communicating, or something that's going on with them in their life. So communicate often, ask questions, how you can be supportive. If you're explaining the job and expectations clearly, and make sure that they're communicating enough with you. You know, it's one thing to give them a job and they're doing it and you don't hear from them. You want to know that they're doing it. If you're using a project management, they should be updating it on a continual basis. So that's important. So you know, but also they should be calling you up and saying, you know, just touching base with you. Your client and I are doing well. Everything's going well. Or I have this problem. How do I deal with that? So they should be able to communicate with you as well. That's the only way that you're going to know what's going on. Now, if you come across several problems that could have been avoided through a better vetting process, you know, maybe it's better to cut your losses early and resolve to not let it happen again and learn from your mistakes and what you could have done to prevent that. You know, so, you know, that's something to take your time looking for a qualified freelancer so that when it comes time to end the contract, you can be sure it's a personal choice and not due to performance issues. I mean, that's something that I looked up on a law site, and I thought that was something that was really good to mention. And the bottom line is have pre-qualifications and vetting processes in place, along with a detailed contract agreement, which can save you so much headache and issues. Although, as we all know, you can't always avoid any issue. I mean, things can hit you on the side. It's all a learning process. But if you document well, then you're protecting yourself and you're learning, and you'll get better as time goes on. Now, the last thing is how to to let. I think we talked on that, but I just want to make sure I mention how you go about letting them go. And most subcontract agreements give some guidance regarding grounds for terminating the subcontractor. And you may list such things as failure to adequately do the work on a regular basis, systemic basis, meet the schedule, or non-professional behavior. So if you have some of that in your agreement, that's good to have, because then you can refer to that, and talk about that, and maybe have an exit, write up an exit document about it, so that you give to them, and that's a learning process for them too. And as well as you could keep it in your record, regardless of the circumstances. I would say when you're ending the contract, try to make it as non-confrontational, just informative, and be respectful, and be clear, and make sure that that you leave in good terms, and whatever that good terms is. Maybe you don't want to give a reference, but maybe you could say, listen, maybe this is not the right time for us. Maybe you need more experience, or you need to solve some personal issues, but if maybe there's a time in the future that we can work together if if those issues are met, and then wish them well on their way. So that's what I have to offer.
I think it's so important, though, some of those things that you mentioned. And I will tell you, it's the hardest thing when you have to let a team member go, because to me, team members, they're almost family, and we try to communicate. And, I love my team. It's real, so it's really hard. You get to know them and their family and their circumstances. And sometimes, they might be going through a hard time, but you also have to take care of your clients, and you can't just pay somebody to not do the work. And so it's hard to have that conversation, and this is a little raw for me because it's not that long ago that I had to do that. And when we went back and forth on emails, and I finally just said, look, give me the information, because I need to get another team member on it, even though please don't, and all that. But she had already missed so many of my deadlines. And so I just said, I just can't do that. But I think she thought I was going to still keep her on to work on the project later. And so we had a phone conversation, and it was really hard because I'm terrible at, I'm usually an encourager. I'm not one to have to, always give bear bad news. But it was really hard because she said, so you're not using me any longer on this? And I said, I'm sorry, but I just can't right now. I said, I wish that I could, but I just really have to get this finished and make sure, it's done on time. And I understand you can't do that right now. And it was nice, though. I mean, we did end up on good terms, and she even emailed me a nice long note apologizing, because at the first she did, she was like kind of telling me to chill out. She was going to get it done. And I'm like, well, you need to meet certain deadlines along the way in order for me to see that you're going to get it done. And then I'll chill out. If I can trust that they're going to do it, I don't bug them about a project. It's only when I see that they're not, and then I get a little antsy, like, am I going to have to jump in? And I did in this case, but fortunately I had another team member that could also do the work. So I only had to, step in a little bit on it. But it was just the hardest conversation, even though we both knew it had to happen, you know what I mean? And she asked if I would maybe use her in the future. And I said that, you know, should there be another project that I felt she would be good on, you know, that I would. And because, you know, things change and circumstances change, and maybe she'll be in a better place, you know, those kinds of things. You just never know. And we get along fine. And all of those things are hard to find in a team member. So it's really hard to let them go, you know. And so anyway, that I just found that to be very, very difficult. I mean, I'm trying to think how often I've had to do that. That's probably one of the first times. In 10 years, I can't remember having to, maybe one other time, but it was kind of mutual. We both knew this was not working. You know, within 2 weeks, it was like, okay, this isn't working. Let's move on. You know, so, but that's about the only time out of 10 years, you know, that I've had that. Most of the time, I've had team members that had to leave because of their own businesses. That's usually the reason. Or there was a health issue or something, you know, along that lines. And I will tell you this little secret too, for anybody watching or watching the replay. I have gotten to the place in my business where I actually no longer hire people who own, I mean, the contractors always own their own business, but I mean, who don't work on other clients, let me put it that way, you know, or their own clients, you know what I'm saying? So if I can give them enough work, I'm looking for people who only subcontract, in other words. So they could subcontract with you and with me, but I need people who are not going to say, oh, well, I'm getting clients on my own and I've got to grow this and that. I'm great. I love to mentor people and everything, and I love to teach them. So I would take on new ones, you know, new VAs and everything, and teach them all these things. And 6 months later, they're gone because now their business is growing because they've learned all these great things, you know. And I'm not saying they didn't have the skill, they did, but it's just there were things, little nuances and things. So it just was too much turnover. It just took too much energy and time. And like you said, it is very hard when you have to get new. Just like, you know, they say it's a lot cheaper, a lot less expensive to keep your clients than have to get new clients, right?
Right.
Did you want to jump in and say something?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I think you're right. Just
Yeah,
like,
so it's so hard, you know, it's just really hard to all of those things. And so when you're doing a multi-skilled team, and regardless if it's VA or any other kind of business, when you have a team, it is very hard work. A lot of people jump in and say, oh, well, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have a team because I can make more money. And this, I'm going to tell you, I don't make a lot of money because of it. You know, I'm still not at that place. And it's a lot more work. Like if I really broke down what I made an hour, I'd probably be better off working just with one client and, you know, doing it. But I love it. I love it. I love working with the team. I love working with the clients. I love everything I do. So, you know, but it's just, you know, you don't jump into this flippantly. You really need to know what you're doing. And I think some of the things that you were talking about with the processes and all of that and having things in place, doesn't that come into under the manual of operations, let's say, like the employee issue, you know, because I mean, they're 1099 employees, contractors, subcontractors. So I think it's really important when you're laying out that. And a lot of times we don't think we need it because we're VAs and we're working for this and that. But when you get into managing a team, you have a company that you're responsible for. And it is important to make sure. And like in mine, I know I really need to update mine, but mine, I even have like the hierarchy. And my eventual goal was to have a team leader for each type of service we offered. So like a team leader for social media, team leader for virtual assistant, you know, and all of the different services we offered. And so I have all of that in my manual, like this is, and then if something happened under this particular service, you would go to this person, you know what I mean? And of course, that's all me right now. But eventually, you know, that was my goal. And I have that set up in there. And what they should expect and everything else. But what I haven't been doing very well, and I really need to work on this myself and just being vulnerable and sharing and transparency, is I really need to have them probably initial that they've read the whole thing through, and update it first, and then initial, that they've read through and they understand the processes. Should they leave? Should we have to part ways? Sicknesses, all of those things, because it's just kind of like, we don't need to know where they are every hour of the day. Let's face it, we don't. But if certain things aren't going to be met, like for me, for social media, we do daily reports in the morning. So our clients know in the morning they're going to get a daily report, okay, about what's happened, as long as they have things on it to report. So if one of my team members isn't going to be able to send out that report in the morning, it's important that they let me know, and to let our clients know if I'm not going to do it for them. And so, those are the kind of things you have to make sure outline, because you don't think of them until somebody misses it. And right now I have a great team, so they let me know these things, and it's not because I want to keep tabs on you or where you are or anything else. I just need to know you're going to, do what you need to do for the client. And that's the main thing. I want to keep my team happy, and I want to keep the clients happy. And if we all do that, then we're in a good place, right? So I think, there's a lot of nuances to managing a team that a lot of people don't consider or think about when you get into this. And it really is about being a leader and managing properly and being able to have those tough conversations, even when we don't want to. And so that's really hard. I think that's one of the hardest things so far. I mean, that and firing a client, both have been very difficult. Although I was probably glad after, because it takes the weight, because for weeks, in both cases, it's this, what am I going to do? And it's just not working. And, you can go months on end where everything's working great. And then suddenly, woo, and it's such a stressor and a burden until you get it straightened out, So, and then the other thing that we were going to talk about is, how do you seamlessly transition for your clients? So that's another, it's one of those things that if we go back to what we've been talking about with the processes, manual of operations, process for each client sometimes, because sometimes it's different for each client, and having that in place, so that when a team member does leave, the client hardly notices, other than if they have contact with them, there's a different name. But other than that, the person is on task, they're up to date with the information, they understand what the client needs. So it's not just rolling off the old team member nicely and in a good way and parting ways, but it's also onboarding. So you're doing both at the same time, which is time consuming, but it's also necessary. And so you're having to bring another team member up to speed, where the project is, what's going on, what's happened, and why it has to happen this way, especially if you've had to fire somebody or something like that, and make sure they can handle the process from that point, because they're not starting at the beginning, they're jumping in. And so sometimes that's a hard, not everybody can do that. So you have to make sure your team member can do that and match the right person with them. That's a huge part of running a team, is matching the right people to the right clients, because that can be a mess too. But so making sure you have the right person to take over after is how you seamlessly, keep going. And of course you make the introductions, and all of that. But I have had very good success with that, transitioning team members when I needed. So I'm very grateful for that, because I have great clients too, and they understand that sometimes things have to be, and even moved around sometimes. It may not even be that a team member left, but like, for instance, I've got to move some things around next month for a couple of team members, because it's gotten a little unbalanced, and I need to make sure the other one is going to be able to pay bills, So I have to and one kind of has a little much on her plate, so I need to transition and give some of that to another team member. And because the other team member is familiar with the work and the client already, so she can jump in and begin doing that. And the other team member was fine, because she has plenty of work still. So, it's all of those things. So it's not even always that somebody's leaving. Sometimes it's a matter of a client leaving or cutting back on work, or, various things. Or even like this particular client, it's interesting. still is going to be paying the same amount, but is transitioning what she wants done on her account now. So like one portion she's kind of getting rid of, another she's beefing up, and the other one she's keeping. So, it's all of those things that you're trying to manage and make sure. So my one team member who was working hard on this one thing, now there's none of that. And I'm going to have to teach her to do some of what I was doing, as well as give her some of this other for the client. So, but she's familiar with the client, so that helps. But you just never know what's going to come up in these things.
No,
and so having that.
It may help, like, I don't know if you do this, but, a way of handling that kind of stuff is like, I'm sure you have team meetings, right?
Oh, yeah.
You all together, and then maybe, each team member is talking about where they are with the client, what they're doing, so that everybody understands.
Yeah, so it's true. Well, it's interesting. It is. And honestly, I didn't even start having team meetings till recently, because I was so in communication with everybody. And because of the way it worked, it wasn't, most of the time, one team member had one client. So there wasn't any necessarily overlap. But it's gotten to the point where mostly, I've had clients upgrade to different services. So like somebody needs, we've almost become a little boutique digital marketing agency, because we do so much email marketing now, blogging, in social media services, ads, all that kind of stuff, that like I have team members that love doing the writing and the blogging, so they get that part of the client. And then the other team members who do the social media, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, it doesn't always cross over, but they might work on the same client. But I did start having those team meetings because I felt it was important, because we're getting to a point in the business where I think that's very imperative. When I was only having one or two team members, it was different. And actually, having a team meeting for the ones who are doing particular services, because I felt that it had gotten to that point that we needed to kind of share and do different things. And it was really great, because there was stuff they were struggling with that I didn't realize, and that they didn't necessarily tell me. And so we jumped on, and I was able to do some screen sharing, and they told me where they were stuck, and it worked great. So we're going to start doing that monthly. I don't think we talk so much in between that it's not necessary for us anyway. Every team's different. It's not necessary for us to meet every week, but because we're communicating daily, really, to be honest, at least through email and the project management system if needed. So, but it is important, because having those meetings, because you don't know. And I love my team. I want them to be happy. So I would rather them come to me and tell me if they're not, than be looking and I don't realize, And so, yeah, I definitely want to keep them and keep them happy. So it's important part of that. So I think you're absolutely right in saying those things. It's just interesting, all the different things that can come up and the different reasons why you might need to transition a team member, right? I mean, you just never know what a day is going to bring. And one of the reasons I love this job, because it is different every day. It's not like I'm inputting data every single day, or, you know what I mean? That's why I stopped the bookkeeping and gave it to the team, because I just got tired of that, and I enjoy working with people. I guess that's what it boils down to.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I did too. And I feel that communicating and like you do with your team at the time, and just asking them how they're doing, what challenges they're having, it will be so much helpful,
Yeah, it makes a big difference, because they could be struggling physically, they could be struggling financially. I mean, just all different ways, or their household could, or somebody, their husbands or children or whatever. And if you can be a listening ear, it helps them too. We don't get a lot of interaction other than online and with our team, right? Because we're not in an office. So that has to kind of be, and you need to make sure you do a little of that with your team. Doesn't mean you gossip and all that, but you want to be invested in them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because it does make a difference. And it also helps to ward off anything that may be coming down the pike,
Mm-hmm. I
So,
agree. Yeah, I think I shared last month, I can't remember, but my son was struggling because they were overbooking him for the services he provides with his boss. He's the only one right now in the field, excuse me. And a lot of times the scheduler was adding on jobs and he wouldn't get home till 7, 8 o'clock at night and have to leave again at 6. And it was just wearing him. I mean, he's 21, so it's not like, our age where you're like, oh, but it's still, it's wearing on him. And he wasn't even considering looking anywhere before that started happening. And I said, you know what? And he has a great relationship with his boss, with the owner. And I said, you know what? He would much rather you come to him and say you're struggling than you go to him, a month or two later saying you're leaving, because he's a good employee, and that would devastate the business, because then the owner would have to get back out in the field, and he's trying to set it up differently. So I said, just go and talk to him. And it really helped. I said, I know as an owner of a business, I would much rather my team tell me, look, I'm really struggling with this. And then I make the adjustments, because, if somebody doesn't like doing something, I don't want them doing it. I'd rather somebody else who enjoys that do it. And, I will tell you the two major questions I ask in an interview now, when you're talking about the vetting process being important. I ask them not only to email me like their skills and all of that, because I keep that chart as we know, but I ask them, what is your favorite thing to do? So in other words, when you're working daily on different things and tasks, what is the one thing you really look forward to doing? And then I ask them, what is that one thing you hate doing? Like, you have to do it, but you're like, oh, you put it off and you don't want to have to do it. And it's very interesting because sometimes they're doing the things they really hate and they don't want to be doing it, so it's just kind of interesting. And that's why a lot of times they're looking for new subcontracting work. So I would rather give them what they like if I can, in any way. And then you have someone say, oh, I'll do anything. And I say, no, I really want you to think about this, because sure enough, I would put them in something and they won't like it, So that, I think those are really two kind of important questions to ask people when you interview them, so that you bring them on happy, and looking forward to what they're doing.
right.
So,
And they need to be honest too. So about that.
mhm.
And so instead of saying, well, I can do just about anything, and that's great,
Yeah,
but you don't like everything. So what is it you don't like? Because
yeah.
if they're not going to be honest, then that's going to set you up, both of
Oh,
both of
yeah. Oh,
up.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because they're trying to put their best foot forward. It's an interview kind of thing, and so they're going to say, oh, I can do that, and that's fine. I'll do whatever. But really, they don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to. So you really want to know that. And I think I'm very transparent with my team, even to the point of they know what the clients pay and they get a certain percentage of it. I got to the place the last several years, and these are a couple of big changes that I've made in my team business. Is one, I started letting the clients have direct contact with the team, and then I was more hands off. That freed me up to be able to do more marketing and the other things I needed to do. If I was being the point person on everything, it was too much. So I manage the projects, of course, and I'm always overseeing. If I see anything, I'm CC'd on everything and I read them. And if I see anything, I'll make sure to email back. So I do handle that. But before everything came through me, I'd have to reword or do something, send it to the team. It was just getting to be too much. We talked about the different types of managers. And, I would say in the beginning, I was almost a hovering, one of those hovering managers in the beginning. But I've gotten really hands off now, because I know I have a good team and I have great clients who know I have a good team and enjoy working with my team. So that's one of the big changes I've made. Then the other big change I made several years back was to be very transparent with my what I pay, and I'm very transparent. They know what the client pays. They get a certain percentage of that. And I even tell them when I'm interviewing, just go online and look at my packages, and if this is what I'm going to have you work on, look at the package and see if that's going to work for you. And if not, I understand, but that way they know right up front, if that's going to work or not. And but in the beginning, I didn't used to do that. In the beginning, when I started teams, I would bring them on and I would just say, but I also didn't have my rates up and all of that. And I learned a lot of hard lessons, and I think having the rates up made a huge difference in my business, because you don't get the tire kickers and those who want to really.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm going to move to doing that too.
It's
Because
huge.
it is huge. Yeah.
Because they see, but the funny thing is I still get people who never look at my website and want to know, you know what I mean? But they're still the higher end, client that we're looking for, who really understands the value we provide for our client.
Right.
And so it's amazing. It's just incredible. And I love it. And we get a lot, and getting good feedback from clients always helps. And from your team, if you feel like you're doing okay with your team, then that makes you feel good too and want to give them more, all of those things. So, yeah. So I had a new team member.
That helps you grow.
Yeah, I had a new team member and I was onboarding her, and all through the process, she's like, wow, this is great. Because she's been for years, she's been in the business, right? Yeah. And she subcontracts now mostly. And so I would tell her this, that, and, get the contract, this, that, and everything, and keep her in the process. And she's like, this is really great. I can't believe you do this, and I was like, what does everybody else do? And she's like, well, not this, And now I'm working with the Dovesado system. So it's going to be, I think, even better, because it'll be more automated too, that they get their contract and sign it, and then they get, the next thing. So like maybe the manual of operation, all of those things can be sent out automatically. So I'm excited about that. It's just a lot to set up. So how is your team going? You're muted, hon.
Well, I'm not where you are. Sorry, I'm not where you are, but I do have a couple of people. But the thing I'm happy about is that it's someone I know well, and I know has very good work ethics.
Yes.
And two of them that I bring in on occasion. So I'm not at the point where I can give them daily work.
Regular, right.
But I feel like I've already ahead of the game, because they're two stable people, and I know them well, and they communicate well, and they follow through. So that's half the battle right there.
Well, you've also conquered another big landmark in your business, when you think about it, because you've had several over this summer. So it's really cool to see that, I mean, it's interesting because part of this journey on VA to VA Mastermind Live has been to share where we all are and how we've transitioned and how we've grown. And you were, we've all been kind of transparent about this. You were just starting your team, you were working full time and all of that. And managing a team was, or creating a team was a big part of what you wanted to do. And so now you have been able to do that, so you have those people that you can call on when you need. So I think that's great. That's part of the process. That's like the beginning steps. And then you'll get to the point where you're giving them the work and, you're working on your business, not in it. Right.
Right. And I'm listening to you, because I find myself falling behind you, but knowing the steps that you're taking and the changes you're making helps me, so that when I reach that part, I already know what not to do, but because you've been there.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, because like I said, I never used to give the team direct contact. I mean, just all of those things. And they were all transitions to me, to have to do that. And they weren't necessarily easy, but knowing that I could was a huge, huge thing in taking that step in my business. It's just one of those things too, where we tell everybody else and our clients, you need to let go of some work, right? So that they can be free to do what they do best. And it's the same for us. We're running a company. And so we have to do that as well when we get to that place where we can, can really hand some things off.
Exactly.
So I'm excited for you and for everybody who's watching, because if you're watching and this is where you are, it's an exciting time in your business. So, yeah. Well, I think we've about run out of time. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's it. I just hope that some of these tips will help our listeners and help prevent them from finding themselves in places they don't want to be and lose clients over it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And I know even after today, it's making me want to go back and look at my manual of operations again and redo some of those things, because I think it's important that you always know where you are, as well as that it's very transparent for your team as to what would happen if if you had to go through these processes.
Right.
Hopefully not, but you need to be prepared though too. So. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, Lisa, we hope you get better. We missed you. And if you're watching in the replay, guys, we really appreciate it. Please share and tell others about our VA to VA Mastermind Live. And we meet monthly, the first Friday, usually of the full week of the month is when we usually do it. This month was different because of the 4th. So please join us every month. And we are also on Facebook under VA to VA Mastermind Live, as well as Twitter and Google+. So join us on any of those. And our website is va2va.com. So we'd love to have you there too, and sign up for a newsletter and a freebie. So, all right, everybody, have a great weekend. See you again soon.
Bye-bye.